they wouldn't have agreed to this if it's a very small percentage. So they
Right.
won't be paying this out.
Correct.
So basic, but what you just said there, Script, to me that sounded like, well, because of this deal, now I'm gonna have to deal with commercial breaks on
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah, they're gonna go AVOD. They
Yeah.
already have promised to go AVOD.
Yeah, but that
They've already
sucks for
promised that.
me. That sucks for
Well,
the audience.
well, it sucks for the ones that don't want that, but guess what? There's probably going to be a very expensive tier that allows you to have that that privilege of no ads.
Yeah, it'll be
Right.
2 tiers.
So yeah, thank you, writers. You screwed over the viewers.
But briefly, if you want to script that, we'd appreciate it if you just kind of take us through the basics of what this strike was all about, what you guys managed to get in the end, and how you think it'll affect things going forward.
Well, this strike was about getting an increase to combat some of the rising prices in California for a living, because obviously the government over there has been destroying the state. In addition, it's been also getting a little bit more transparency with regards to streaming and control over streaming. Much like what this headline says by Variety, AI is not a writer. In fact, essentially, AI has been prohibited to quote from their number 5 point on artificial intelligence. They say that AI can't write or rewrite literary material, and AI generated material will not be considered source material under the MBA, meaning that AI generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights. A writer can choose to use AI when performing writing services if the company consents and provided that the writer follows applicable company policies, but the company can't require the writer to use AI software, example ChatGPT, when performing writing services. The company must disclose to the writer if any material given to the writer has been generated by AI or incorporate AI generated material. And the WGA reserved the right to assert that exploitation of writers' material to train AI is prohibited by the MBA or other law, which essentially means that if there's any generative AI technology that has used written work from a union member, past, present, or future, it is not to be used in the creative process through the studio system. And one of the brilliant aspects of this is that if you are a screenwriter and you punch in your script to a AI that hasn't been trained on screenwriting, that act of doing it has now contributed to the training of AI, therefore making it no longer valid as a source when it comes to writing. So it basically locks out AI and any new AI technology if a WGA writer were to use anything with it for the purposes of writing. Now, with regards to purposes of research, or maybe using it as a thesaurus to figure out a word that you can't get and Google search isn't helping you, that's fine. That can still be done. For using an aggregate to calculate what audiences want, there's no stipulations prohibiting that either. Basically, it's locking out big tech from using AI for using writers' work to train AI to essentially replace writers. So it's quite a fascinating win for the WGA. We'll have to start counting the days until big tech finds a way to usurp that, and it's always possible. And then the other big point is that the mini room, which is something that's created by the studio to develop in-house shows for their streaming services primarily, have minimum staffing requirements. However, the traditional method of making a television show, such as writing a pilot, getting it sold, putting it into production, pilot season, that is under the old rules as far as the contract displays, which means that people like Taylor Sheridan, who didn't have a mini room for his shows, isn't subjected to bringing in writers under this minimum staffing agreement for his stuff. Same thing with like J. Michael Straczynski when he did Babylon 5 back in the day. It is up to the showrunner's discretion. In addition, the mini room is now has a price point to it with regards to minimum staffing and minimum work time to the point where it is actually more beneficial for the studio to use the traditional model than it is to use the mini room, which basically supports my theory that because the writers were so upset with the existence of the mini room and how the practices were being done, that they just made it more expensive for the studios to do it. And in favor, it might allow for more creative processes for shows outside of that model. And basically a mini room is basically saying, we're going to pay you guys a sizable amount of money in 6 weeks to develop 6 to 12 episodes of a streaming show, as opposed to the normal time it usually takes to develop a television show on a network or cable model.
All right. Well, we have somebody else joining us real quick here, Script. I didn't want to interrupt you in your flow.
No worries.
But we have another fellow Canadian, Mr. Paul Chato. How you doing?
That's right. Good. 100,000. Actually, I'm at 111,000.
Yeah. You jumped like $3,000 in like a week.
I know. It's I paid for the hookers. That's what. Anyways.
Oh,
yes,
so
please.
you were on Cloud9 in your video. That explains it.
So please, yes, please continue. I was on Script's previous live feed and it was fantastic. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I did my best to try and cover the basics, the big points. One of the other big wins, because we have a whole lot of assignment work out there, and that's basically adaptations of existing IPs. Second step guaranteed was done on that. So if you get an assignment script and you turn in your first draft, when the studio gives you notes, you are promised to put those notes into a revision of a draft and get paid for it, as opposed to someone else coming in and rewriting you. This is a pretty good deal because at least you get 2 paychecks for an assignment gig, where beforehand the studios just said, we only want to do second step for original stuff. And the union was rightly to say, well, you barely make original stuff, so screw that. You're giving us second step for all the IPs that you're doing. Now,
if I'm correct, I think the Writers Guild of Canada has had that in there like forever.
You're probably right. I haven't had a chance to ever look at their contracts because I've barely done any work that fell under the WGA.
The WGC.
Or WGC. Yeah. But
yeah, you always got a first crack at doing a
rewrite. Yeah.
A rewrite, which I was shocked when you mentioned it in the previous run that has never been part of any WGA contract. That's crazy.
It was basically kind of a case-by-case negotiation for a while, but I think because the fact that more output has been produced over the last 10 years than previous generations, they're basically seeing, we're getting some of our original scripts that we're selling are getting rewritten by other writers, and we're not getting credit, so we need to sign and retain that. And arbitrations have been increased since the early 2000s as well because of that very thing. And I was actually really shocked that wasn't part of the initial terms prior. But one thing that was incredible is that the negotiating team of Alan Strutzman, Chris Kreiser, and David A. Goodman really went neck deep in the details to address some of the past issues that have been ignored and get them resolved here. And it's pretty it's pretty surprising because of everything that the WGA asked for. The only thing they couldn't get was writing staff to be in part of post-production to see how the editing and direction of the show was going before it was released on streaming.
I could see them not getting that.
Yeah. So that's basically no longer part of the default. So it's up to, I guess, an acclaimed showrunner to negotiate that as part of the terms when they sell their pilot.
I was really impressed with the list of things that the WGA, quote unquote, got. It didn't seem unreasonable to me as a writer. It didn't seem crazy. So, I mean, it's clear that at least the WGA negotiating team really sharpened their pencils and
they,
I'm impressed.
Me too, because I've never seen something like it's this. From my experience, this was a very unprecedented negotiating tactic, and I was really surprised that they got what they want. And I mean, despite all the trades trying to say that the studios are, going to starve them out or, has got them on the ringer, it seems the opposite was true based on the proposals that you see in the left column, the studio's initial response and the amount of rejections without counteroffers they have. And then in the left column, all of the capitulations that the studios gave into and they leaned way more on the side of what the WGA wanted than anything on what the studios wanted.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Mm.
that's the basic summary of it, right then and there.
Oh, Arachi wants to know the opinion on the SAG authorizing video game VA strike. Voice acting.
I see. The thing is, I haven't heard anyone that I know that does video game voice acting have any problems with the video game companies and their pay structure and rates and things of that nature. So I'm a little lost on why that's brought up. The only story I can think of is, wasn't there an actress last year that was replaced on a video game that she'd been working on for a couple of sequels to or something? Or they tried to make her work for like only 2 weeks and pay her for that, but there were like longer hours. That's the only problem I can recall in recent history. So I'm not sure on the details of that, but I'm certain that probably in a week's time or so, what those details are will start hitting the trades.
Well, they voted overwhelmingly to authorize strike action.
Oh yeah, they voted for it. I just don't know what they want.
I think they want not just voice acting, but also motion capture actors and things like that to be getting the same kind of pay rises that the writers and the other actors are going to enjoy. Percentage increases and so on and so forth, including like they want like on-site medics for motion capture actors.
Yeah, so basically just use the same model that's done for
dangerous
motion captures in theaters. They want that applied on the video game side of things.
Yeah, and stuff like that.
I mean, I wonder if the video game companies can afford it, because again, they are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on video games.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of money spent in production of a video game. It would be, to be fair, I mean, if I were a video game maker, and this is going to offend everybody here, maybe, I wouldn't have anybody that was union working for me. I would just be like, nah, not a union shop. Take me to court.
It depends on what you want. You up here in Toronto, what's happening is that an awful lot of agencies that have eschewed union talent are now going back to it because it's the best talent, whether you like it or not. The amateurs are amateurs.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into that, but I'll just say this: you don't need terribly qualified people for motion capture work. So you can go hire a wonderful martial arts studio.
Oh, I mean, if you're talking motion capture, of course you're going to hire the expert in that area.
Yeah,
I just thought that the actors don't want to do so many high-voiced characters and are demanding to cut that down. I thought that would be one of the first things that you would do. I'm tired of doing high-voiced characters.
Yeah.
Hey, you're using an affected device.
Yes, but see, that's how
do you know what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's
how you can use a high. That's how you can.
I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. No, yeah. That's very well. Anyway, that was fun. But like I said, I don't see there being a whole lot to quality video game stuff. I mean, clearly, even with high quality people, you still end up with Fallout 76 and Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, Vic Mignogna did very good voice work.
He does.
Well, and video games are a much different animal across the board, no matter what. No matter how much people want to keep comparing them to films, the process of making them, how long it takes for them to come out, the lifespan of a video game, all those are so much different. The entertainment value than films or television. So I'm not so sure that I'm not saying that the actors don't deserve whatever they're worth, but it's at the end of the day,
listen,
you don't get what you're worth, you get what you negotiate.
If there's also just the volume of work. If you've done a branching RPG game, that script is 600 to 1,000 pages. And you got to
right. It's like I said, it's a totally different animal. Yeah.
You've got a if then else just a massive number of lines that you've got to say, just for every single possible occurrence in a video game.
That's my point. It's a completely different animal.
Totally
all across the board. We got Marksman 117B who has got one here for script. Says that was Bayonetta voice actor. It was outed that she was paid above the average rate. She was trying to use public pressure for higher rate. See,
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I knew there was some
Yeah.
sort of controversy there. That's good to know. Thank
thanks
you, Mark.
for clearing that up. Appreciate that. Was there any other questions from anybody on the panel about the strike for script, or was there any other points script that you thought were interesting that should be brought
I
up?
have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, but Paul, you go first.
I have a question. What does it mean with regards to projects with 4 episodes per week have lower breaks? What does lower breaks mean?
I think that's part of their budget and turnaround time. So because like your daytime talk shows or your primetime nighttime shows, their breaks are basically the weekends and not usually when you're doing like a drama show or a comedy show, you have a set of writers that are working on one episode, and then that's the only episode they're working on. And then they don't work on once they submit it in, they actually have a break before they have their notes.
No, I think they meant it's a budget breaks. It's here. It's like,
oh, is it a budget break one? They're talking about like the $150,000 and then the $60,000 stuff,
or for the 250,000 for
right?
60
Okay,
minutes.
okay, I know what you're talking about.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's just their breakdowns for each episode. So sometimes the weekly ones, because all their stuff is amortized over the 4 days, they have a shorter budget overall, and that makes it lower. Whereas like a sitcom or a hour-long drama, they have a slightly higher budget because of either locations or different sets that have to be built at the time or redressed at that time. And then whatever you're doing on those sets, you have your own residuals that come from each day of work. Since you're most likely going to be scheduled for every day, like a Jimmy Fallon writer's room, you got to come in that morning, take a look at the news, write the monologue jokes, and then be there to do rewrites throughout the whole day, and then do it again Tuesday, then Wednesday, and then 2 shows Thursday, because sometimes I think they do a pre-tape show for Friday on Thursdays, depending on it.
I do like this line where if a show moves to SVOD, that they've got to give notice. The company's got to give notice. That's great.
Yeah, and the SVOD models and the free advertising models all use the traditional network model residuals with a little bit of a bonus when they move over there. So it's basically leading into the theory that's going to actually sustain and improve the quality of the shows, because in order for those higher ad revenues, you have to have more people watching.
All right. Andre, you said you had a question too?
Yeah, I do. Because this strike has now been going on for 5 months, and now it is over. I mean, I guess that there's still some ratification left and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, how do you think this, for writers, how has this strike changed the landscape in Hollywood? We know that some deals, for instance, have been force majeured out.
Yes.
So that's
and some have been suspended. Yeah.
Yeah, and the suspended ones, I imagine, will probably be coming back once the strike is over. But I'm curious, for writers on the ground, what has the repercussions of this been? I mean, are there fewer writers now than there were before? Are there some that won't come back, you think? And then I'm specifically thinking on the more activist ones. Will they find it more difficult to return now, or has it just been like, you push the pause button for 5 months and now it's back to normal? What do you think about that?
Well, having witnessed some of the stuff through live streams, some of the stuff that's been shared on social media, and some of the things that I've gotten from friends who are physically down there, there is a short list of writers that a lot of the more veteran writers that would be working with them in television are not going to be hiring them.
Yeah, because people that have like made a negative impression in social media, someone were paying attention, is what you're saying.
Enough were paying attention to be like, no, we're watching out for them, especially some actors and directors that showed up to support and saw some of the behavior and vitriol that was espoused out to not just the studios, but also to like other people. Like there's some people just yelling at the higher paid showrunners for making more money than them. And it's like they completely forget the idea that they had to earn that. And some of the highest paid showrunners you're lucky if you can find 20 of them, because there's not a whole lot out there that get paid a whole lot to have such heavy influence. It's always a short list for the studios. So yeah, there's that going on. The other part too, there's a big sigh of relief because a lot of people on strike were definitely concerned about their cash flow, but at the same time they're also worried that they might not get a good deal because again, there's been a number of examples previously where everyone has touted, this is the great deal or the best deal we're going to get, and then they look at it and they're like, this is kind of weak. I mean, it's better than what they had before, but it's still weak compared to what it could have been given the elapsed time. But this one here, what I've been seeing and hearing is that they were surprised they got as much as they did. And it almost seems like they're saying it justifies the length of the strike, even though three of the 5 months were really just waiting for the AMPTP to come back to the table because the ball was in their court. So they're relieved on that. This morning and late last night, I was getting texts and emails about how it's going to be really funny to see the hack writers try and actually compete with everyone now that they basically have locked out any sort of generative AI to cover their crappiness. So that could cause for a nice little filtering of.
So you were saying it's going to be more difficult for less skilled writers after this?
Yeah, they're going to actually have to up their game, and they're not going to be able to do it. I mean, again, listen, they've always been struggling for a long time. The check boxes that have been used prior are kind of fading away as no longer being mandatory, at least on unwritten mandatory rules. And the ones that were kind of holding on by a thread and relying on the AI stuff, that especially the stuff that was released just last November, aren't going to have that tool anymore, at least not to be used in the way that they've been using it before. So that means that they're probably not going to last very long. And as I said on my show, and as I've mentioned on other channels, the WGA has a metric that you need to meet every 3 years if you want to maintain membership. You don't just get in once, although there are some people that have got in and they still pay their dues, but they're quite high names and they don't always make their units, but they're legacies pretty much. But for the newer ones, if you don't make your 24 units in your 3 years or 3 to 5 years, depending on how new you are, you're not going to be protected by the union anymore, in which case you're not going to be working, which case, unless you write something that's good to warrant you getting back in, you're out of the industry, essentially, at least in that field. And that's been a WGA thing for many, many, many years. And it looks like that process, that merit-based process, or at least the merit-based process in the sense of you're able to sell a script to someone that's going to keep you in the union, is going to be harder for them to maintain compared to what it was last year.
Okay, that's very interesting. And speaking of like people being noticed for their behavior, this is something we spoke about on Monday. With the likes of, for instance, Bob Iger and David Zaslav, who were personally taken to task by a number of writers and people in the picket lines. You think that they are petty enough that they will have noticed and have their own little blacklists of who are not welcome back?
Oh, yeah, they're not going to forget.
But I think those were actors. I didn't see a single writer.
There were some writers that
there were some. I mean, there.
Things.
Yeah, sorry, Culture. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Script, please.
Yes, there were definitely some writers that were calling out Iger and Zaslav specifically.
Okay.
Not writers that I could recognize, but I'm pretty certain that because they went public with it, the assistants of those two men got their names, and it basically said, yeah, they're not coming back on the property. Because listen, ego is very fragile in Hollywood. And what's really ironic is that I'm one of the few writers that thinks Zaslav being the head of Warner Brothers is actually a good thing, because I'm familiar with how he handled Discovery and made that as big as it was. And I'm kind of a small voice in that regards. But I think that also is going to be to my benefit, because if I ever do get an opportunity to meet him, I'm not going to be on his his list. So, and I'm
This,
not lauding him either. I'm just thinking like, oh, that's a good decision. Maybe he's going in a good direction. You know, I'm not.
No, but Script is right. All these folks that have talked out, they're going to have a real nice talking to at some point, or they're going to pitch something somewhere, and they're going to be reminded that they talked shit on certain people that were very high up in the upper parts of the studios. Yeah.
It's like, why is he not taking my calls? Geez, maybe check your Instagram.
Or the ultimate torture is to take the pitch and just go, thank you very much. We'll don't call us, we'll call you.
Thank you very much. There's a tote bag out front.
I was really impressed or surprised at the viewership based streaming percentage. That's bizarre because that's a 100% capital loss on the part of streamers.
Pretty much. But the other part too is that if the writers want to get the most of whatever that percentage residual is, they have to give us a good show. And now that they're able to see the numbers,
interesting.
Now that they're also able to see the numbers because the studios have capitulated saying, yes, we will show you the numbers through an aggregate, but it's under a confidentiality agreement, which means that the writers can't share it publicly. But it means that they'll see the numbers, they'll see that their show sucks. And then they'll be like, we got to figure out a way to make this show good so that we can get the most residuals from this distribution deal, especially for the foreign markets.
Well, that's kind of neat. That's if you hit 20% of the
20% of the subscriber base. Yeah.
Subscriber base, that really encourages you to not make a piece of shit.
Yeah, I know.
Good chunk of cash.
I have a question about that though, because doesn't the streamer have to make money first?
I mean, ideally, if they have a good show, the streamer should be making money as a result of that.
No, they're not making money. They're just hoping that they don't lose subscribers. This is what's always weird about SVOD, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because this is the thing that I don't. Because if the writers, my understanding is that now they actually do get like some extra thing for every hour that it streams. So Rachel Zegler won out for since she had to wear that dress every hour someone sister watches it, she's gonna get paid. Where's that money coming from? Because let's just say that it's Disney Plus. Then Disney Plus, they don't get paid anything for you watching it. They get paid for the subscription fee. And beyond that, you can have that thing on repeat and there's no money in it whatsoever. It's like the same thing with Netflix. Like, for instance, I pay my monthly subscription fee and that's it. After that, I can watch nothing. I can watch one thing on repeat. I can watch the same 10 minutes of one thing over and over for a month. They're going to see it, but there's not going to be any more money. They have my subscription fee anyway.
Well,
where's the money coming from?
It depends on what you're talking about, though, Andre. If you're watching say Friends over and over again or whatever, then I think there's residuals that are paid out. But like, if it's just those,
no, it doesn't apply to that. It applies to original shows. And then here's the other part too. It's basically going to be coming out of any other money or credit that the streamers are doing, but it's also got this one aspect, which is it's going to force the streaming services to go to the FAST model, the television network model. They have to start selling ads onto all of them in order to create money to actually pay off the expenses they're doing. This is basically the WGA putting forth a deal to manipulate the distribution model of streaming so it can still be competitive and also still be lucrative for the industry. It's quite a clever. I mean, again, one of the things I'm surprised is some of the clever tactics that they were using here. They basically figured out the patterns of what studios do when it comes to every single WGA and SAG-AFTRA contract they've done over the last 40 years. And they're able to say, well, whenever things went up here, they stopped doing that. So let's actually make sure that we get the stuff that we don't like to be more expensive so that they stop doing it. And they did that with the mini rooms, it looks to be. And it looks like they're going to do that with the streaming service, where if it's a streaming service that's only taking in cash through subscriptions, it's not going to be sustainable. And so what they have to do is they have to convert it to an ad-supported model. And they've already won a ad-supported streaming model in their contract, which gives them comparable residuals to the network and cable model. So it basically just creates across the board stability of income for hit shows.
And the other thing that I would add is the streamers know what percentage of new shows actually will break the 20%, 50% barrier. They wouldn't have agreed to this if it's a very small percentage. So they
Right.
won't be paying this out.
Correct.
So basic, but what you just said there, Script, to me that sounded like, well, because of this deal, now I'm gonna have to deal with commercial breaks on
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah, you're gonna go.
Yeah.
They're gonna go AVOD. They
Yeah.
already have promised to go AVOD.
Yeah, but that
they've already
sucks for
promised
me.
that.
That sucks
Well-
for the audience.
Well, it sucks for the ones that don't want that, but guess what? There's probably going to be a very expensive tier that allows you to have that that privilege of no ads.
Yeah, it'll be
Right.
2 tiers.
So yeah, thank you, writers. You screwed over the viewers.
I don't
Well,
think so.
only the ones that don't care about ads. Like that's the thing. People have been missing commercials, random commercials that show them stuff that they otherwise wouldn't know about. And also the other part too is this comes with a structural format, so that your shows are actually paced out properly.
And I want to
I
see
don't
the
know. I
Bud Light
don't know
girls.
that I buy that people have been missing. I think that for people that go to streaming, the lack of commercials is one of the big incentives to go with that in the first place.
If they
Now,
price it,
we are-
it low enough,
Yeah, and
then-
now basically you lose the thing that was actually really cool with streaming, the no commercial breaks.
but to me, the commercial breaks are important as long as they don't abuse it, and long as we don't get 12 commercials.
Yeah, but that's
every
because
break.
you're a former network executive. To me, as a viewer, the commercial breaks are one
But-
thing only.
But
I
you
see
did
where
that-
Andre's
not to have them.
But
See-
so there's a couple things. Number one is you're going to get a cheaper streaming option. Now, whether they get greedy
No,
on that,
no, I'm not. I'm going to get the streaming option that costs exactly what I'm paying right now with commercials, and then I'm going to get an even more expensive one
sure,
to
and you're
have-
right.
get what I have
Yeah.
right now. That's what I'm
Yeah.
getting.
Well,
So
why
I
not?
will
Yeah.
say, I was curious, who are the losers in this deal? And now we know it is you, the viewers. You're the losers in this deal. We're the ones that will pick up the tab.
No,
Yeah,
and
well-
I gotta say Andre's right, because I've always been kind of in the middle on I've never had a problem with having a tier system in streaming, and Script and I have had this conversation about a dozen times now, where this has been the big mistake from the very start, is that things like Netflix like Hulu had the right idea from the start. You have tiers of you can have a non-ad supported, or you can have ad supported. And obviously it was much cheaper to get Hulu ad supported. It was only $4.99, right? Well, what Andre's saying is absolutely correct. Now you're going to end up pricing out anybody who doesn't want commercials but can't afford to spend 20, 25, 30 bucks a month on fucking Netflix. Because that's what's going to happen now. He's 100% right. Because what do I always say? They always find a way to make who pay for it? Us.
Yeah, but welcome to listen. This is capitalism. If they lose too many subscribers based on mispricing their model, they're going to change it. It's the wonderful part of capitalism. And as a producer, let me tell you one advantage it is for me. If I've got some, and I've mentioned this before, if I've got some old show on Netflix that nobody's watching anymore, but suddenly I've got an AVOD option that I'm going to get more money if I can get people attracted to it, then I'm going to put my own money into promoting it to bring it up, to raise it above up the Netflix.
Yeah, but I'm the people you want more money from.
right.
Yes. And then
Right.
here's the other thing. You're also ignoring the fact that there are a number of free ad-supported tiers that will also be licensing the shows that would normally be on the higher tier ad point, just at a slightly later date. You're still able to get it. The only difference is that you've got a commercial ad, which guess what? You can use that to go to the bathroom, or what you normally would do it back in the network and cable days. Again, when cable started earlier before, it didn't have any commercials, and eventually they had to bring it in there. And guess what? People still bought it.
If they keep it to,
Yeah, because
Three
the
ads per
option
break.
not to was taken away from them.
Here's one
Yeah,
thing though I gotta
if
say,
it's a
because
2-minute break between acts,
look,
that's pretty acceptable. Yeah.
Look, I'm all for ads to help with better entertainment, but on the other end of it, I see where Andre's coming from. You also have now where we've had almost close to 10 years where people have been conditioned in a certain way, this is going to cause a bunch of people, especially when a lot of people are going to be like, you know what, this ain't fucking worth it because the crap they got on there is garbage. I'm not spending $30 a month just to watch Squid Games once a year. That's what you're going to run into, unfortunately. They've already had a churning problem. And I think this is going to cause an even bigger churning problem. But unless they have a free supported system, but then at that point, here's my next question though. Okay, I'm fine and dandy with all this to a point. I understand where Andre's coming from. I can live with that. But how long before these ads get the people that are, you know, supporting these systems, however you want to put it, since they're not technically networks, how long before they start deciding, well, you know, that last episode you had of whatever was a little too violent. I think we need to start cutting these shows down. And that was kind of the whole point of some of these streaming shows, is that they could do what the cable networks could do and stuff like that, where HBO, they get away with doing what they do. Why? Because they don't sell ads. They don't have to bow to any sponsors. They can put whatever they fucking want in their shows. You can say cocksucker 500 times in Deadwood. Why? Because you don't have to worry about Kraft going, well, we just worry about, you know, our macaroni and cheese audience hearing the word cocksucker 50 times in a show. You know what I mean? Like, that's the next step I'm worried about, is how much control does that start to give away from creativity?
Well, I mean, I can guarantee you that the streamers will do a better job of being able to target ads on shows that have self-flagged themselves for different age tiers than YouTube has. I don't understand. YouTube has been very lax or incapable. Look what happened to Brand in that. Why don't, you know, right now we have two tiers, safe for children and not safe for children. Why can't we have multiple tiers?
But we also have had adpocalypse for this very reason, Paul. That's my point.
Yeah,
right.
So
I can see it coming from a mile away.
I
like,
can guarantee you the company, the streamers like Warner's and everyone else who really understand how to treat advertisers, they'll have that sorted out.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 AM Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.